if this virus was passaged in the lab under conditions that were special, in other words, if it was passaged in human cancer cells, well, cancers have particular idiosyncrasies, and any particular cancer that you would choose would have idiosyncrasies. And those idiosyncrasies would have a lot to say, potentially, about the way the virus functions. Also, you point out the issue of evolving away. To the extent that this virus might have been passaged and favored to adapt to certain cells, that might be giving us advantages at the moment. Like, for example, the difficult time the virus has transmitting itself outdoors. Well, the laboratory is an indoor environment. It's possible that something was selected for that made it particularly transmissible indoors, and it did so at cost, at expense to it, in terms of how transmissible it is outdoors. And what's going to happen then is, over time, it's going to become more transmissible outdoors. So I don't know if that story is right or not. I mean, we don't know if this came from the lab or it didn't. But if it did, and that has had effects on its nature as a virus, then not knowing that is going to cause us to make the problem worse. Because to the extent that right now we have a virus that we can interact outside and not transmit it to each other, we would be very wise to act carefully so that it does not learn the trick of being transmitted outside. And if we're casual about outside, it will evolve in that direction. So one thing I really hope people get from our discussion is that this is not a question of blame. This is not a question of who cares, it's now a human pandemic and let's deal with it. This is a matter that has very important implications for the pandemic that we are facing, how long we will face it, how many people will die. If it is a wild-derived virus, we need to know that. And the way we're going to find that out is we're going to settle this by finding a population of some other creature, an intermediate host in the wild. But that's going to require transparency with respect to what went on in this lab in Wuhan.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, I don't know if we're going to get it. I mean,
well,
they hold all the cards unless there's immense international pressure.
I don't
agree. Whistleblower.
Well, yes, a whistleblower would be great. I would love to see a whistleblower. But, Yuri, you have no idea, I think, how important an effect you are having on this story. Right? We saw
me.
Matt. Yeah, you.
I hope not too important for.
I know that
some
for
people
whatever
want to
reason,
get rid of me.
Oh yes, you're not important. Hello. Yes, Yuri is completely unimportant, and he doesn't know what he's talking about. Just ignore him. But if we were to put that aside, Matt Ridley published in the Washington Post this week an article pointing out what you have been saying, and in fact, he.
Well, it wasn't just me. It's just, I mean, a lot of people were saying, and many of them way prior to my article. And it's good that there are people who are not afraid to speak out. And
I agree.
Let's hope there's more and more.
But well, again, I don't want to put you in danger by pointing out the centrality of your work. But I think a lot of people have had the same reaction to it that I have, which is that we go looking for evidence, and we find that a lot of the evidence is compromised by people who do have such a conspiratorial bent that they are basically verifying their own beliefs rather than doing an honest, careful job of sorting the evidence that goes in both directions. What I saw in your work, and what I expect Matt Ridley saw in your work, and what others who I know have cited you, I saw another one in the Bulletin of Atomic Scientists today investigating this question. It also cites you. So your clear self-skepticism, your desire to do this honestly, you and I share a desire to actually be wrong in this case. It would be much better if this did not come from the lab.
I don't want to be right.
I don't want to be right either, but if we are right that this is the most likely explanation, I'll speak for myself, I believe it to be the most likely explanation at this point. If we are on the right track there, then it is urgent that the virology community stop telling us a fiction and that they come clean with what they know and they understand. And I think in order for that to happen, it is incumbent on us to be clear that, let's say the worst is true. Let's say that this virus was created in the lab, that it was the result of a chimeric virus that was then passaged through human cells, and that this explains something about the way it behaves now that it's escaped into the human population. That does not mean that this is Chinese in origin. The scientific community was engaged in these experiments. Yes, this most likely would have come from the lab in Wuhan, but that lab was involved in international discussions. The granting agencies include the NIH. So this is a global problem. We share responsibility for it. And the most important thing is that in an effort not to take responsibility, that we don't bury the evidence of what the virus is, because that evidence is essential for us figuring out how to deal with it, which is obviously, to any reasonable person, the most important question on the table.